Okay, listen. This is a very uncomfortable video to make for me. It was very uncomfortable to script it. I am very uncomfortable now recording it. And I know I will be very uncomfortable editing it later. But this is a conversation that we as a society are going to have at some point in the future. So I figure, why the hell not have it now already? That's kind of what I try to do on this channel. When are we finally going to accept pedophiles and let them do their pedophile thing? I can tell you when it's not going to happen, which is now or the near future. This is very much a when question. But it is going to happen eventually, I think. So let's talk about pedophilia for a few minutes. Now, obviously, pedophilia is attraction to prepubescent children. If you're attracted to underage, like teenagers, is that post-pubescent or pubescent children? Then that's hebephilia, and you can get away with that if you're like a hot woman, but it's still illegal and it's still wrong, and we're gonna call both of these things pedophilia because that's pretty much what people do all the time. Pedophilia is a sexual orientation. This is a fact. Listen, I really get saying no because of this and that arbitrary benchmark in order to protect the LGBTQ+ community from arguments that could be extrapolated to them by idiots. The gays had to fight a long time to have the stigma of like homosexuality as hurting somebody somewhere removed in like the common zeitgeist of society, and that's still not fully happened. And a lot of their argument hinges on this is just who we are, this is a legitimate sexual orientation that we have. And if pedophilia also is a legitimate sexual orientation that people have, you get problems when you're stupid. But let's be fucking fair and nuanced here. Pedophiles do not have control over who and what they are attracted to. And the fact that children get older has no bearing on whether or not they are attracted to them. There are people who are attracted to roller coasters. It's a fucked up sexual orientation. You can never ever act on your impulses because that would rightly make you a monster. Imagine for a moment being afflicted with this fate, right? Knowing that acting on your impulses is wrong, but your impulses come from your sex drive. Your sex drive is super powerful. It's a whispering snake that'll make you do shit. It's very, very difficult to live like that. The only pedophiles you're ever gonna see in the public eye are those who diddle kids, and probably they're gonna rationalize it because even they don't want to be monstrous psychopaths. The pedophiles who are pedophiles and keep quiet about it, they will never talk about this at all. And you probably know I am fairly liberal on the issue of pedophiles. I am in favor of like all the weird Japanese drawn stuff. Anything, or the, like even child sex dolls, anything that doesn't involve children at any point in the process of producing it, I am fine with, because I want to be effective at making sure that no children are getting diddled. Everything involving that entire realm needs to be done by consenting adults. And that's really the fundamental issue of why pedophilia is wrong. It's wrong because a child cannot consent. Even if they say yes to everything, their brains are not developed enough to understand the full ramifications of what is happening. That is why it's called rape. And I know that there are probably a handful of kids out there who do have the mental capacities to consent to that shit. And I know that the line that we have drawn might be somewhat arbitrary, but personally, I'd rather play it, safe to protect the overwhelming majority of kids who do not possess the ability to consent. And if you're one of those map motherfuckers who's just trying to like bring the but maybe children can consent into the conversation right now, fuck right off. You do not get to instrumentalize this video. I know you're just hovering like a hawk. Seek therapy or some shit. In the year 2019, a child cannot ever consent. Period. My question, however, is thus: what if a child could consent? This video is going to have so many sound bites that are going to be taken out of context. So it's the future. You have access to all kinds of super fancy advanced technology. You can build hyper-realistic sex robots that look and behave like children, which, depending on how advanced your AI is and how it works, opens a whole different set of moral questions. Isn't an AI that emulates a child's mind also kind of a child? And would fucking a sex robot that actually emulates a child's mind not be wrong for the exact same reason that fucking an actual child would be? But that's not where I'm going with this video. We're not talking robotics, we're talking bioshaping. Let's consider the following scenario. In the future, you have a grown adult. They might be any age, but they are definitely an adult from they're like at least 25 years old, let's say. But they want to look like a child or teenager. We've people who right now want to look like cats and dogs, so I don't think that's too much of a stretch. So they get bodies that make them look like children, and like for all intents and purposes, they cannot be distinguished from children, except their brain is the brain of an adult. They might behave in a childlike manner. I mean, adults now do this from time to time. There are fetishes for that kind of stuff. But they have the mental capacity and the ability to consent of an adult. So if they want to get down and dirty with a pedophile, is that really wrong? It's the age-old lolly problem, right? It looks like a child, but it's actually 1,000 years old. This is pretty uncomfortable already, but I suppose the more liberally minded people among us will go, yeah, it's disgusting, but people are into shit and piss porn, and they are two consenting adults, really, so... Gets even weirder when, they do advanced roleplay, but once again, they are in actuality consenting adults. But let's now assume that we have achieved mastery over the brain, technologically speaking. An adult person could, in theory, reversibly alter the way that their brain works so that it works like the brain of a child. You have a consenting adult agreeing to this procedure that will limit their mental capacities. Whatever reason they might have for that. Now, once again, you have an adult in the body of a child, but now you have an adult with the mind of a child in the body of a child, but they were able to give informed consent at the process at which they underwent the procedure. Which, then tangentially also, you might be an adult who wants to keep the body of an adult, but just have the mind of a child. And is it then pedophilic when people are attracted to that adult person with the mind of the child? Would they have to maybe sign a form that goes, yep, when my mind is limited to the state of a child, I consent to having sex with people. But is that really consent that you can give? Because it's not really informed consent if maybe you don't even know who you're gonna have sex with, who you're gonna run into, And is it even okay when you do sign that form? Say you are in a committed romantic relationship with like a long-term partner, and you trust that person, and you both have this idea of this thing that you want to do, and you consent beforehand to whatever happens, and get this procedure. Is it then okay? Because consent is a super volatile thing. You could be having sex with someone and they go, no, stop doing that, or just let's stop altogether. But if they're actually like a child from their mental state, can they really? Children are super easily manipulated. They're not very good at standing up for themselves. If the procedure is easily reversible, how often do you have to wake the person up, as it were? How often would these intervals have to be? And this is not just true for the sexual component, but for relationships as a whole. The reason we protect kids in the way we do is because they're just not very good at making decisions and accurately analyzing situations, be they social or otherwise. And they're also not very good at standing their ground very often. The thing is, I can very easily see this being something that people might be into. I mean, it's something that happens already. One of the partners will pretend to be a child, maybe just only in private. It's something that people do. Combine this with access to super advanced technology, and Jesus Christ, do you enter a quagmire of difficult to solve moral conundrums. And this doesn't even need to concern pedophilia necessarily. There's really no reason why consenting adults shouldn't be able to transplant their minds into the bodies of, say, a goat, if that is technologically possible and they want to do it. And even mentally, I know there's plenty of people who want to at least vacation as being cattle for a while. The whole thing becomes even more complicated when you factor in abusive relationships, because even informed consenting adults will sometimes make very poor decisions where matters of the heart are concerned. People can be extremely manipulative, and I have seen what happens to the victims of abusive relationships. I mean, what if someone is coerced into signing the documents and undergoing the childification or animalification procedure, even if it is only mentally, and then they give sort of guardianship over themselves to the partner who is an abusive partner that coerced them into this. Even if they eventually got out of that situation and were able to reverse their minds to a functioning adult state, they would still be massively traumatized by that shit because they were raped at a point at which they could not give consent. I do not have answers to any of these questions. I don't think it's my job to have answers to any of these questions. I just know that in the, well, probably like medium to long-term future, we're going to have to find answers to these questions. And if I'm entirely honest, I'm not sure we'll be ready to have the answers to these questions at that point either. Yeah, I mean, that's that. This is probably the most fucked up video I've ever done. But it's been rattling, the idea has been rattling around my brain for months. And I just sort of needed to explore it a little bit. Thank you very much for watching this video, I suppose. You know, like, comment, subscribe. Actually, comment a lot. I'm really interested in learning what people think about this thing, because I myself am at an impasse in terms of answers. Maybe support me on Patreon or Subscribestar, or buy some of the merchandise, or be weirded out and unsubscribe from the channel. I would totally get that. And yeah, in that spirit, do not instrumentalize this video for your pedophile acceptance movements of the 21st century. Stop, stop, stop. I do not agree with you. I do not like you, and you should fuck off. And see you around, cunts.